I can stop looking or wondering where, I wasn't looking, but wondering where she is. It's been 40 some odd years, and it's a whole lifetime.
A long time indeed. Cold case cracked how Fairfax County Police were finally able to identify a teenager who went missing back in 1975. State of emergency, what families in Florida are doing to stay ahead of Hurricane Ian, plus the latest and timing of the storm, and how local teams will help once the danger subsides. And later, 'tis the season for sales, when Amazon is rolling out Christmas deals for Prime members.
And we are live here in your local Ford Weather Center, tracking a few showers moving across the region. But when do these exit? When do those breezy winds finally calm down? And what is the latest with Hurricane Ian? We'll have all that coming up for you in just a bit.
Thank you, Damon, and thank you for joining us for DC News Now at 5. I'm Mark Hall. Developing now, a major break in a cold case tonight, nearly 50 years after a Fairfax teenager went missing. DC News Now's Katie Reed joins us in Maryland, where she spoke with Patricia Gillowy's family about this new development. Katie, what are they saying after all these years?
Good evening, Mark. Now, unfortunately, after all these years, tonight we know that Patricia Gildowy's case went from missing to murdered. Now, while law enforcement and her family, they say they're thankful that she's been identified, but this has now presented more questions rather than answers in this murder case. Nearly 50 years after her disappearance.
It brought a relief to me because I know that she's going to come home. She's not going to come home the way that I wanted her to come home. Why did he kill my sister? She was maybe, she was a kid. And why did he shoot her the way he did?
There are other people that we want to talk to. Anyone that knew her then, maybe they heard something, they didn't believe it. Now we've got some answers, but we need a little bit more help to find out who would have done this young woman harm. Again, it's a tragedy, but a tragedy that can be solved.
So when you look at that, do you see just everything that you're describing, her blue eyes? Now, nearly 50 years after her disappearance, the remains of Patricia, better known as Chubby, have been identified. Chubby went missing in 1975 when she was just 17 years old. Almost 30 years later, construction crews working on Lincoln Circle in Tysons, they found her remains in a ditch in a wooded area. But it took more than 2 decades for science to tell us that those were Chubby's remains. And it has since been revealed that she was shot in the head. And while the identification of her remains has brought some closures, police and Chubby's family have more questions. Now this case has turned into an active homicide investigation, and anyone who might have investigation, they're asked to please come forward and talk to the Fairfax County Police Department, and I'll have more details about this story later on at 6. But for now, reporting live for DC News Now, I'm Katie Ree.
Thank you. And happening now, Hurricane Ian inches closer to the Sunshine State. Families living in Tampa are lining up for sandbags to keep their homes safe from flood water. Now, work is also being done around the city to make sure storm drains are kept clear. Well, time is running out. Stores are packed tonight as people buy everything from gas to generators. And a general manager for Lowe's said that they sold all of their generators over the weekend. He says people are rushing to keep their homes safe.
We know in this area, especially previous storms, even if there's not a lot of damage, power outages have been huge for several weeks sometimes.
Said that he also had seen people purchasing tarps and 2x4s and whole pallets of water and anything else they need to protect their homes. Well, happening now, Florida Governor Ron Desantis has announced a state of an emergency ahead of Ian. The governor urged people to prepare for the worst.
Anticipate power outages. That is something that will likely to happen with a hurricane of this magnitude. Anticipate fuel disruptions. That's something that could happen with a hurricane of this magnitude. And also anticipate that in certain areas of the state, if you are in a very vulnerable area, there may even be evacuations that are issued. So listen to your local officials and heed those warnings.
Well, the director of Florida's Division of Emergency Management said that they are preparing trailers filled with food and water for areas expected to be hit the hardest. Well, Virginia Task Force has arrived. Task Force 1 has arrived in Florida ahead of Hurricane Ian. Now, they will serve as part of an official FEMA response team to help people affected by the storm. Well, meteorologist Damon Matson is keeping a close eye on the hurricane first. And Damon, can we expect to see anything hit the DMV?
Well, if anything, Mark, we won't see anything for several days. That storm does have to take itself through Florida before we possibly see any impacts. We'll cover Hurricane Ian here in just a second. The current picture out there so far, we have a cold front that moved through yesterday. That's well off to our east. There's still a low pressure center over Canada, and that's spinning around in place, throwing some showers still across parts of the area. They're few and far between, but we have had some cloudier skies and a little bit of light precipitation back over the mountains. But the majority of us have just seen a good mix of sunshine and cloud cover and some breezy winds that will likely last through this evening as temperatures start to fall off into the 60s. Things should calm down with that mix of cloud cover and clear sky continuing as we go on toward your Tuesday morning. But here we go. This is the picture with Hurricane Ian. It's got that classic look, a very solid core to the storm as it continues to intensify ever so gradually as it moves off to the north. It's likely to clip Cuba and then head into the Gulf of Mexico, the very warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico. And just with the latest update, there it is. Again, it's been strengthening all day, 100 miles an hour. Now it's up to Category 2 status, and it's not done by any means. Still, the forecast calls for this to turn to a Category 4 storm as it approaches Florida on Wednesday. And then look at how it slows down quite a bit. That is a very dangerous situation likely to unfold there along the Gulf Coast of Florida, where you not only have the wind, you're going to have storm surge, and you're also going to have a lot of rainfall all piling up over some of the same areas before this starts to move north. Now, the models, they continue to show a very consistent pattern with this storm impacting Florida. That's what these lines indicate here. But look at how all of these lines start to spread out as they move off to the north. That's toward this weekend. What that means is, as it approaches our area here toward the weekend, it still is a bit uncertain exactly what we'll see. But at this point, there could at least be some rainfall with the remnants of Ian across the DMV as we move towards Saturday and Sunday. But we'll have a full look at that whole forecast and how Ian could impact that coming up here in just a bit.
Damon, thank you. Hey, tonight we're learning more about how the community is remembering Buddy Harrison, the boxer, trainer, and popular gym owner who was killed this weekend. DC News Now's Annalisa Gale is working the story, and you found out that Harrison's son will continue on with a fight that was scheduled before his dad's murder.
That's right. Buddy Harrison owned a gym known as Old School Boxing, which served as a safe haven for young people in the community. His friends and family say his death is a huge loss for the community. In a touching post on Instagram, his son Dusty, who is now a professional boxer with help from his dad, shared that his death seems surreal, saying, quote, "He beat cancer. He's been shot before. He's been stabbed before. Did 10 years in prison. Had heart attacks." Also adding that he watched him fight through chemotherapy and he loved life so much. DC police believe whoever shot Harrison was on 30th Street Southeast just before noon. Planned to do so. They believe this was a targeted event. Buddy was approached by two masked men moments before he was shot. At this time, we still don't know why. That motive is unclear.
We are still interviewing people in the boxing community just because our decedent had such a heavy impact in the boxing community.
And Buddy's son Dusty is still scheduled to fight at the Entertainment and Sports Arena on Saturday at 7 p.m. in a pre-planned match. A $25,000 reward is being offered for any information leading to an arrest. For DC News Now, I'm Annalisa Gale.
Annalisa, thank you. New tonight, families have been displaced after a fire broke out at the Willowbrook Village townhomes in Charlestown, West Virginia, early this morning. 10 apartments in the townhouse community were destroyed, and fire officials say it took almost 4 hours to fully extinguish the blaze. Townhouses in a nearby block were damaged by the flames, but are still inhabitable. Residents say they observed unattended tiki torches in the yard of one of the townhouses shortly before the fire broke out.
Yeah, she was having a party and she had tiki torches set up underneath of the wood deck. And about 1:30 in the morning, somebody noticed that the deck was on fire, and they called the fire company. How do you recover from that? I still don't really know what to do.
Yeah, residents say that one person went to the hospital suffering from smoke inhalation. The state fire marshal is investigating. The American Red Cross is helping the families who are affected by the fire. Well, the United States is warning Russia not to use nuclear weapons in Ukraine. Fears are growing that Russia might use a nuke as it rolls out what experts say are sham elections in eastern Ukraine. Washington correspondent Trevor Shirley has more tonight.
Well, those elections in eastern parts of Ukraine got underway this weekend, even though many U.S. officials say the results will almost certainly be fraudulent. The thinking is Russia plans to use these illegitimate elections as a way of declaring eastern portions of Ukraine as Russian territory. The fear is then that Russia could say its own territory is being attacked to justify using a nuclear weapon in Ukraine. U.S. officials say these elections show just how badly Russia is faring in Ukraine. World leaders have condemned Russia's staged elections, calling them coerced and a sham. President Joe Biden, along with other U.S. officials, have warned Russia that it would face a disaster if it decides to use nuclear weapons, although officials haven't said what a response would be.
If Russia crosses this line, there will be catastrophic consequences for Russia. The United States will respond decisively. Now, in private channels, we have spelled out in greater detail exactly what that would mean.
The United States and its international allies continue to supply Ukraine with offensive weaponry and military equipment, all the while trying to avoid a direct conflict between NATO and Russia. Reporting in Washington, I'm Trevor Shirley.